so I found this guy. His name was Jean-Luc.
But I talk about relationships first.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like one of my things is, whatever's going on in business, the very first thing is the relationship, right? And so
if it's in a business setting or any other situation, you say, well, what's the difference between a 6 and 9 for you? And people are more likely, and specifically the specific talk shift that is, I don't think it's number 9.
Hi, this is Mish Hancock, and you are listening to MichMash, a place where I get to talk to the weird, wacky, wonderful people of this world, people I adore and want to know more about. Today, my guest is Krister Ungerböck. He is a global communication expert, keynote speaker, and CEO coach who delivers groundbreaking insight for lead high-performance teams, driving leadership development efforts and maximizing business growth. Hello.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. And so I wish that, people are going to listen to this on the podcast and they're not going to be all looking at us on the video, but I'm telling you, the guy is color coordinated. It's awesome. You have awesome glasses that match your
my kind of Dutch glasses.
Yes, I dig them. And you got this cool colored shirt, and then he's wearing colored tennis shoes, so I am super happy with that because I am such a tennis shoe girl.
Well, they'll be able to view the video on the webpage, right? On Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook, exactly. So,
if you really want to see the orange glasses.
You came to me via my buddy Laura Jones.
Yes.
And she's so excited about everything that you're doing. So tell us.
She's been a great supporter.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. We like her.
She was one of the beta readers for my book, which has just been retitled 22. Well, the working title is 22 Talk Shifts, little language changes that make a big difference in business and in life.
I like it.
So, I think she called me and said that she got to a certain point in the book and she broke down crying on an airplane when she was with her husband going to Mexico.
Oh.
And so I'm finding that the book he's having, I actually never would have imagined that I would write a book that would that would bring people to tears in a positive way. So it's having a big impact, and that was almost a year ago, and so I've got an editor who's written and worked on over 50 New York Times bestsellers, and she's helping me to take the book to a whole new level.
Oh, great.
It will be published no matter what next year. I was just talking to her this morning, and actually as soon as I leave here, I'll be talking to her again, and we are going to start rewriting this thing to make it a big deal. So.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just when you think it's done, it's not. It feels like, and then it'll get published. You'll go, oh, I wish I would have now. I mean, then you come out with the second edition. You're good.
Well, it was one of these. It's actually, it's crazy how things happen for a reason. The book, I had a title that I was really excited about. Probably about a year ago, I came up with the title, and just 2 months ago, I found out that there was a trademark issue, and I did a trademark search, so I have no idea how we
you can get surprised by that stuff. Yeah.
And so we had to come up with a new title, and as soon as it happened, I wanted to just kind of, crawl in a hole and cry for, maybe 24, 48 hours.
Yes.
All the investment that I've had in that brand, and, all the things I was going to have to redo. But then I knew, this is going to be a blessing in disguise, and I think that the new name is so much more reflective of what it is, because it's about shifting perspective using words, and shifting our own perspective. It's about shifting others' perspective, and I'm just there's this. I was just sending an email to my marketing agency and my agent last night, saying that I can feel the energy, like my energy around this. I was telling you I've barely slept the last 2 nights because I've got so much energy around, and so I'm excited about the possibility that people are moved to tears in the last version, and my energy level around this next version that's coming out is it's sky high compared to what it was a year ago.
So what is a talk shift? Give us some examples.
So talk shift is, it's simple, practical, say this, not that rules.
Gotcha.
That help transform or shift frustrating relationships both at work and at home.
Okay.
And a lot of it comes from, I was fortunate I had to learn to lead in 2 new languages. Certainly after September 11th, I moved to Europe.
Okay.
And I didn't speak French, I didn't speak German. And over the course of 6 years, I was leading teams and speaking with customers in French. and German, and I got really present to the words that I use, and it's really it's an eye-opening experience to have to learn a new language as an adult. So many people learn languages,
Right.
a second language, from their parents when they're it's
Right.
an unconscious process. And so I had this French teacher who was voted as like the best business French teacher in all of Europe by the European Wall Street Journal. And I was at a customer. One of our first customers in France was the Cannes Film Festival, the Palais de Festival de Cannes.
Okay.
And I thought, I'll go down there, and my French is terrible, but I'll go down there and I'll lead this 3-day workshop in French, and that'll force me to speak. And I did that, came back, I thought I did a pretty good job. The salesperson called me on Monday, who reported to me, and he said, boss, there's a big challenge. The people in Cannes said, don't ever send him back here, his French is terrible.
Oh, no.
And so I found this guy, his name was Jean-Luc, the French teacher, and I was in his home like 2 weeks later. We're launching a business in France, and if I'm the leader, I can't even, people want to kick me out. I'm probably going to have to fix that, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things with Talk Shifts were some lessons that, like, in terms of how he taught me French and how he taught other people French in record time. The Talk Shifts are kind of leverage some of the lessons learned that came through that kind of experience of learning a new language.
Okay.
And then the other part was kind of over the last 3 years. So I say about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago now, I had what I say kind of a simultaneous business and personal divorce that was spaced out by like about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so recovering from that and kind of putting my life back together and all that, I took, for the most part, about 3 years. I can't say completely off. I took about 1.5 years where I was really just not working at all. And then this whole time I was really on a journey of like, what was I missing, right? So it's like, clearly there's a common denominator here between this business divorce and marital divorce. And it came down to, again, words. Like I realized that in many cases my heart was in the right place, and we had driven great success. We'd built a company with hundreds of employees in 8 countries. And I think that, it's by most business leaders' standards, I think that I would be considered a fairly successful person.
Right.
And, but as I said, I realized that while for as effective as I was maybe at work, I wasn't necessarily in my personal relationships, but also the relationships for people who worked closely with me. There were a lot of those were broken relationships, and I was a big part of that. And, so the thing that struck me and kind of set me off on this journey was, after this kind of simultaneous business and personal divorce, I was reading a lot about divorce. There's a guy named Dr. John Gottman, who's kind of the foremost researcher on marital relationships and divorce. He can predict divorce with 90% accuracy after
Wow.
observing a couple talking for like very short periods of time, a couple hours. And he looks for 4 specific communication patterns. And what struck me is that those same 4 communication patterns were present in every single business relationship that was broken in my life.
Interesting.
So a lot of Talk Shifts is really about taking things from, it's about taking the best practices and the best research out of the marital and relationship world and applying it to work relationships, and taking the best practices from the business world and applying it to create great families.
Which I love this. I mean, I'm really into words, and I'm also
I noticed
so
the three
talk
W
about
alliteration in the beginning.
But I talk about relationships first.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like one of my things is, whatever's going on in business, the very first thing is the relationship,
Yeah.
right? And so I start with what is the best thing for the relationship between myself and this other human being, whether it be another business owner or what have you. And if I put relationships first, then I feel like you don't have a bunch of regrets. Then you're like thinking of humans. But I'll tell you what, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna be right back because I want to learn more about this.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Krister. That is so awesome. And I won't say anything.
Oh, okay.
We'll just say it on the podcast because you got me. My head's like woo, spinning. Whenever you're ready, Sam, let us know.
All right, here we go.
All right. right, so we are back with Krister Ungerböck, and so a few things. First of all, I love that these lessons started coming to you after learning another language, and so I went to school in Spain, and that's how I learned Spanish. But the thing that I was most astonished by was how much I learned about myself and the English language by learning another language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And then there were feelings, thoughts, what have you, that could be expressed in Spanish that I couldn't express really in English without a whole bunch of words around it to try to go, here's the feeling. It's kind of like, I'm like, but it's not really, I mean, isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. I love those kind of different phrases like that. But I wanted to come back to you were talking about the relationships first. And
yes, let's talk about that.
So when I was CEO before this 3 years ago, I was the complete opposite. I mean, I was like just
business first.
I don't know your kids' names. I don't know your whatever. Like, maybe if I was lucky, I would know somebody's kids' name. I don't know kids' names and things like that. And so, to some degree, I think there's probably a fair number of successful men and probably women as well that, it's all business. And a big part of maybe what I'm hopeful to do is, like what to some degree, people like myself. I would look at somebody who's like a relationships first. I remember there was a podcast that I used to listen to called Manager Tools, and they were talking about it's all about the relationship, and I was like, that's BS.
Oh, who cares?
Give me the hard
Let's get
tools.
to that business, yeah.
And that's really what the talk shifts are also somewhat drawn from that, because they had a very concrete, say these words, say this, not that kind of approach. And my intention with talk shifts is, in many respects, is to take. Is maybe to come from the side of the leader who is the kind of leader who I was, and help them shift and see the shift that I was unable to see, 5-10 years ago, and I think that it's the interesting thing that I found is that these talk shifts, as I practice them in my own life, it's not something that I just practice at work. I practice with my kids. In fact, I was on a big national syndicated radio show yesterday. I was telling my kids last night, I was like, hey, he was asking me about scale of 1 to 10. They're like, yeah, you ask us that all the time. And,
what's scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, so it's one of the talk shifts is when we ask questions, we ask on a scale of 1 to 10. And which is not in and of itself necessarily, but what it does is when I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy working together, or, how is our communication? Versus saying, do you think we have a good working relationship? What's the answer?
Right.
Yeah, yes, and yes.
Right, yeah.
But when I say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm actually opening up a more honest conversation.
That's
so the funny thing was this. I often talk about these in podcasts. So this radio host at the end, he surprised me, and he said, "So how did I do as an interviewer at the?" And actually, I was like, "Are we still rolling?" Because I was like, I really didn't enjoy the interview at all.
Oh,
and
no!
So I said,
should I ask at the end? I'm kind of afraid to.
And I don't know if he's gonna. I don't know if he's gonna actually. If he's gonna cut this before it goes to air next month. But I said 6, which is kind of bad, right?
Right.
But then I realized, one, because he looked like he was gonna put it on air. But then I realized that, the reason is because he's a radio host. Like, if you ever do TV or whatever, I mean, they take you off your script. He was just interrupt. As soon as I would get on a roll, he'd be like, go.
Oh, off we go. Fast.
So I said, that's the reason why I said it was a 6. And he was like, okay, and we had a good fun, joke about how my talking points, I didn't get a single one of them out because he kept taking me on a different direction.
That seems hard. That's why I'm more conversational, because I think it's more fun to be organic and just let the conversation go where it goes. You know what I mean?
I think I personally enjoy this more, but I can also see. Actually, I learned a lot just by observing his style.
Right.
I think that in radio and TV, I don't think it really necessarily works when people are driving in their car or whatever.
Gotcha.
So his style is very specific to that medium. So it took me a moment when I said 6, but I realized that. That he does.
He's doing what he's supposed to do.
He's clearly successful. He's doing it nationally, and
right.
People are. He's radio stations are picking up his show because he's getting ratings. Right.
Right.
So, in any case, it was just that scale of 1 to 10 is, and so.
Well, that's a really good idea. I like this idea. I totally want to use it. because it does open up the conversation more to just yes or no. Do you like working with me or not? Do you like it or not? Yes. Okay, great. Yeah. Whereas if somebody said no, they're like, but why? And then it automatically puts it on a, whereas instead it's like, so scale to 1 to 10 and whatever they say, like, okay, can you kind of explain that more? It really does open up a conversation.
Well, and so here's that's a business example. I don't know if you want to go into the deep end of the pool. But,
go.
So when after these kind of simultaneous, I was like, I'm going to go away from anything business. I'd read thousands of business books in my life, and I was like, I did not read a single business book for 3 years. I'm going to do everything that I would like, So I got into a lot of new age and really kind of things, but I always kept my CEO, practical, talk shift, hat on.
Right.
Not going kind of off the deep end. And so I found myself in a lot of weird rooms, including one time I was in New York I would often be the only person in a workshop who actually had like a sport coat on. Everyone else is like sandals. And so I'm sitting next to this woman in a workshop. I'm like, well, what do you do? She goes, well, I'm a sex therapist for people in alternative relationships. And
well, I'd have a lot of questions after that.
Yeah, and so interestingly, like somewhere along the sitting next to each other for 3 days at this workshop is when we ended up talking about this scale of 1 to 10. She said, you know what? I actually counsel couples to actually use that when it comes to sex.
Really?
Because she said if a man asks a woman, like gets denied, over time that starts to hurt a relationship.
Right.
But she said I coach them to say on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the likelihood that you would be open to something this evening?
Okay.
And like a 6 is like, well, your mind might be able to be changed. And a 4 is, I'll see you tomorrow. Let's have coffee. And so this is really how all of the talk shifts are. Is hey, this is something you can practice at work. You can use it as a boss. You can use it as a coworker. You can use it with your clients. But these are also things that you can use with your children, with your spouse, with your parents. So it's that's the thing I think that moves people is that's the universality, if that's a word, of the application.
Well, and I feel like it's non-threatening. It's a non-threatening way of asking a question.
Yeah.
It leaves a lot open, and so it opens discussion, and it's not like you're like, tell me yes or no, right? Because that feels, oh, really? I love it. How interesting.
Well, the second part of that is just is the follow-up question. Right?
Okay.
So if somebody says, well, the sex therapist probably wouldn't recommend this, but if somebody says 6,
right?
If it's in a business setting or any other situation, you say, well, what's the difference between a 6 and 9 for you? And people are more likely, and specifically the specific talk shift that is, I don't think it's number 9 or 22 or whatever, but is the specific words, because I said talk shifts are simple, say this, not that. Often they're say it this way because the words have been, very thought through to elicit the right. But so what's the difference between a 6 and a 9 for you? What can I start doing? What can I stop doing in order to be a 9? So it's very behavioral. It's not like be nicer. Like, well, what is be nicer? What can I start doing?
Right. Right. So what can I start doing and what can I stop doing?
Yeah. Which interestingly, that was an insight that came from a guy named Vern Harnish, who's like one of these. He's like. I'm trying to think how to describe him. He's an entrepreneurial coach. He invented the term gazelles, which is how you describe a company that grows 20% per year consistently year in year out. So it's kind of like, again, taking things from the business world, and I could have a conversation with my spouse, and how do you feel about our relationship over the last year? And she says 6 or 7. Like, well, what's the difference between a 7 and a 9 for you? I can do that. So it's an example of taking something out of the business world that I did learn from a business book and saying, how can we apply that in, one of the things I do that I usually no matter how many times I tell a story, I always get a little emotional even on stage, is I'm already just thinking.
You're going to make me cry. I'm ready.
So I do this exercise on Father's Day that I call the Father's Creed, but it's actually based upon this talk shifts assessment that's on my website. But I sit down with my kids and I ask them, there's a series of 10 statements, and I ask them on a scale of 1. So one is, I appreciate and acknowledge you. I'll sit with them in bed and say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do in the last year?
Wow.
My 7-year-old son, there was one he gave me like a 6. And of course, the follow-up question is, what can I start doing or stop doing to be a better dad, to be a 9 in this? And his 7-year-old says, well, you know what, Dad? The one of them was, the one specifically is, that he said this to us, I seek out your interests and make them mine. And he said, well, Dad, you need to have your own interests. You can't just make all my interests yours.
Oh my
I was like,
gosh,
okay, I guess that's not a bad
insightful
reason to get a 6.
Yeah.
So these things are kind of, as I said, they cross over.
Well, that means you're doing a good job, Dad. Congratulations on that.
Depends on my ratings.
Well, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. I love that. What a cool kid. I have questions for you now. It is question time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Is this the lightning round?
Oh, it's not lightning. No. And you can take these questions wherever you want.
Okay.
But, I stalk you a little bit.
Uh-oh.
It's nothing weird. Don't worry.
No, it's okay.
We won't get into sex therapy questions.
Was that too far for the...
Oh, God, no. No. We had a sex therapist on one time.
Oh, really?
And what I liked, what interested me so much is I had been talking to her, and I'd actually met her through one of our TEDx auditions. And then later I saw her, and I was like, hey, and we were talking, and boy, what she said, I was like, wait a minute, that's a whole other very interesting subject. But her whole thing was, she does a talk about what the vanillas can learn from the kinks.
Oh, yeah?
And the whole idea was that people into the kinkier side of thing, they are very open with the boundaries, what's okay, what's not okay, whereas vanillas are not.
Yeah.
Yet that should still be a conversation. And I was really intrigued with that. I'm like, you're doing a podcast because this is very intriguing to me, All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
Okay, we are back with Krister,
No
and it's
tissues?
question time. No, do you want to get tissues?
No Kleenex.
I promise you I
I'm
won't.
good.
I don't think these will make us cry, but if they do, I'm sure Sam can help us out with tissues.
Yeah.
All right, I love this term, leader archaeologist.
Yeah.
Tell me what that means.
So the leadership archaeologist was the kind of the spirit behind it was about digging deep to find kind of secrets that have been sometimes hidden in plain sight.
Okay.
But also about digging deep inside of ourselves, because a lot of the secrets, leadership secrets, are already kind of inside us. So we just need to dig a little deeper.
Gotcha.
But so it is partly like applying things from the business world, just essentially applying ideas in new contexts. But it's also a good example of a leadership archaeologist secret. There's a book that I read that was written by this peace activist in the 70s. It was originally published as a workbook. It's been on 0 bestseller charts. No one's ever heard about it. It sold millions of copies worldwide, and it was the first book that Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella recommended that all of his executive team read upon being named CEO of Microsoft. And the reason why it never went anywhere in terms of like bestseller charts is because it's called nonviolent communication.
Oh.
So you can imagine sitting on on an airplane. It's a great thing to
Right.
stop a conversation on
Right.
an airplane when you don't want to talk to somebody. Like, hey, just reading the book Nonviolent Communication. But for me, it was the language of emotional intelligence. I was never an emotionally intelligent or empathetic person.
Got you.
And I realized that, so I was actually, clearly
Now
I
you
broke
are.
down crying here.
Yes,
and things,
so
I'm an emotional
emotional
person.
is going, but okay.
This was the thing of the, I didn't have the words to be emotionally intelligent. And this is, I think, where the talk shift message resonates with men, at least, like me. It's like I think women are more naturally emotionally intelligent. And a part of the talk shifts is to give men, or people who maybe aren't as empathetic, to give people the words to be able to show emotion and empathy at work.
Right.
And then, maybe more for women or people who are more empathetic, it's more about giving them the courage to do so.
To
right?
say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to not just choke it down.
Yeah.
Right. Love it.
And so for me, it was the first book that I read. It was easily, of all the books I've read in my entire life, one of the 5 that I would recommend anyone.
I'll be done, and I haven't heard of it.
Never heard of it.
You're
No
right.
one's ever
That's
heard of it.
interesting.
So it's a perfect leadership archaeologist gem.
I gotcha.
It's been around in plain sight for
I
20
love.
or 30
It's
years.
so funny. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's funny about
And
reading.
interestingly, like it has never. There's not a single mention of it in the Harvard Business Review, for example.
Wow.
And so.
And yet, many people have read it. They just aren't telling anybody about it.
But not in business.
Yeah. Got ya. All right. So I know the answer to one of these because I was going to ask you about being trilingual. Yes. So we know English, German, French, right?
Yeah, I would probably say right now I'm probably like 1.75 languages.
Which happens.
I've lost them over
That
the last
happens.
10 years.
But can you say like that's awesome in French and German for us?
That's awesome. C'est magnifique.
C'est magnifique. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. How
That's
about German?
Awesome.
Do we have any
the
idea?
German would say wunderbar.
Wunderbar. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Krister. Okay. And then, so I also read, I thought this was really interesting because I don't know about this. I don't have 30 employees. But what is the 30 employee ceiling?
So I think there's actually multiple ceilings. So there's a guy, CEO of Rakuten. There's starting to be more ads. So
right.
It was some time ago. He called it the rule of tens and threes and tens.
Okay.
Which they can apply to anything, but number of customers, number of employees, whatever. And it essentially is like everything breaks between every time you go from 3 to 10. So 3 to 10, 10 to 30, 30 to 100, 100 to 300, 300 to 1,000. Every time it's like the first number is 3 to 10. And so my leadership style that works at 3 needs to be significantly changed at 10 and 10 to 30. And so what I find, and this is, most entrepreneurial, probably the biggest barrier that most entrepreneurs face, after they stay in business, right?
Right.
Is breaking this 30 employee ceiling. You see a ton of businesses that just kind of, they bounce around between 15, 25, kind of going up, going down, and just kind of can't break through that ceiling. And a big part of it is because of the leadership style of the entrepreneur.
Okay.
My own personal experience going from growing a company from 15 employees to close to 300 in 8 countries, I saw how my own style had to change dramatically in order to break through these barriers. Actually, I was on the way here, got a call from a company to do a keynote speech to 1,300 leaders, all of whom manage 30 people or more, right? And I was like, that's my favorite audience because there's always tons of people in that audience who might be managing 100 people and they still haven't adopted the behaviors that are necessary to break the 30 employee barrier. Because I didn't actually learn these things until we hit close to 100 employees. I was just fortunate to have some great people around me
who
hey. kind of would take the rough edges off a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so yeah, I think that's this. There's just so much untapped potential in entrepreneurial businesses that are kind of bouncing around in that 15 to 25 employee because they haven't quite yet figured out how to scale beyond 30.
Got you. And I like the thought that it has to do with their leadership, that their leadership has to tweak a bit.
Yes, it's and then like having gone through that, I know specifically because I saw how I had to change my own behaviors and so how and what exactly I was doing wrong because most people don't because our growth was kind of over a 20-year period, but we also had periods of fast and
what was
growth.
this business? We should tell everybody what business that was.
So it was an event software company. We're considered one of the world leaders in event software. I'm still an owner in the company. After it was an amicable business divorce at the end. So I'm still in contact with all of the owners who are my family members.
Gotcha.
And this thing is what I see is so many entrepreneurs in that stage actually get. So I'll say it a different way. I had a professor of mine. I went to Indiana University, and my first business idea was like when I was 21 years old. I was working for a company called Booz Allen Hamilton, and I was like, I wanted to quit 3 months after I started. It was like literally a dream job for a Harvard MBA. I'm 21 years old, and I have like the dream job. I quit because I wanted to start a business because it was like the internet. And my professor of entrepreneurship from Indiana University drove up to Chicago to hear my business idea. We're in the Drake Hotel. And he said, Krister, I've got some advice for you. I think you should go back and take your job at Booz Allen. And his point was, he said, Krister, do you know what the difference between what's the worst thing that can happen to somebody in business? And he said, well, you can fail. And he goes, he said, no, failure is the second the second worst thing. The worst thing is actually to not be successful, because you get trapped inside of your own business. And I see so many entrepreneurs who are kind of just enough financial success, not great, but they have like 20 or 10 or 15 or 5 employees whose livelihood is dependent on their business. Mm-hmm. They maybe have just enough debt that they can't close it down and do something else. They're making not the wild living that many of their employees think they're making. And they're essentially trapped in their own business after years and years. And so getting through this kind of 30 employee ceiling, there's really 2 paths. You either purposely create kind of a lifestyle business where we're going to create a 10, 5, 10, 15 person company and keep it manageable, or you've got to get through that 30 person barrier because otherwise you risk becoming trapped.
Interesting. Thank you for explaining all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people working in these 10, 15, 20 person companies that don't realize that maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be, being at the top of the food chain.
Yeah. I have a little company and I like it. I guess so. I never thought of it as a lifestyle though. I just thought of it as a fun company that I get to hang out with cool people and do whatever we're doing, when it comes to marketing. I love it.
I'm doing the lifestyle thing now too, so.
Yeah, lifestyle's good, right?
Yeah.
Well, Krister, thank you so much. Tell us how people can find out more about you.
Best thing to learn about TalkShift is go to talkshift.com/quiz.
Okay.
Talkshift.com
SHIFT.
And the assessment there is a good way to kind of step into it.
Okay.
It's based upon, the greatest turning point I had as a leader was I did a 360 evaluation, and it was the day that I discovered that I was actually kind of a jerk to work for.
Oh.
So most 360 evaluations, especially for small companies, there's like $1,000 setup cost, and you spend kind of $100 per person. This is completely free. It's no charge. You can go, you can take it, and then you can send an email link out to 5 to 10 people around you, 20 people, 30 people, however many people you want. Family, friends, and this 360 that I did included both family as well as people from work. And it was definitely the biggest turning point in my career.
That's awesome.
I found out that while I thought I was a great leader, I had a lot of work to do. So,
and good for you for doing it.
Yeah. Putting
awareness to it.
Yeah. So it's already starting to change lives. I got an email the other day. I see sometimes some of the emails come through when people take the test, and I remember thinking, I think the assessment just shifted a marriage today, because I could see that the husband and wife took it. I saw their scores and their scores of each other, and of course it says, hey, here's your scores. It's all confidential, so nothing's shared with people. But it says, maybe you want to sit down and talk about the differences between how people scored themselves and how you scored them. And so that's kind of like how it's impacting people's lives, both at work, because the same thing happens with bosses and coworkers and all that. But
love it.
That's it.
Well, thank you, Krister, for being here today.
Thank you.
And sharing all this great information.
10. You're going to ask the question. 10.
10. I got a 10. Yes. All right.
Because I actually got my talking points. No, it was a good mix of
but you also
back
talk.
And forth.
The worst is for a podcaster is when the person doesn't talk. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to talk a lot right now. So thank you.
Well, we covered a lot of things. I did not actually have any notes or anything, and but so it wasn't. I didn't have like prepared talking points.
No, you're not supposed to for this one. This is easy going.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir.
Cool.
And
thanks a
for
lot.
people to learn more about you, they can also go to Krister.com.
Krister.com. Well, talkshift.com goes to Krister.com. It's
awesome
just easier
sauce.
People, because Krister's not the easiest to spell.
But
although if you Google any spelling of Krister, you'll probably find me.
Yeah, right. Awesome.
There's not so many of them in the world. Unless you're in Sweden. Then they're everywhere.
Then they're everywhere, but not in the U.S.
Not in the U.S. There's only one in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I've not met him. I'm
It's
actually.
interesting. You should.
I'm gonna
I
call
found
him when I
another
leave
Mich
here.
in St. Louis, and there's
Really?
hardly another. Yeah,
I'm
right.
gonna call him. I actually was thinking about that.
Let's go out and have Krister drinks.
Yeah.
You know, right?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you,
Cool.
sir. Everyone out there, you've been listening to MichMash. Love you all. Have a wonderful day.